My name is Laura DeNardis. I'm a professor in the School of Communication at American University, where I also serve as faculty director of the Internet Governance Lab. People usually describe me as a scholar of Internet governance. I actually have a background in engineering, and my PhD is in a field called Science and Technology Studies. I also spent 5 years at Yale Law School as a postdoc fellow and the executive director of a think tank there called Information Society Project. I'm very interdisciplinary. I have that background on the technical side, social science side, and in law. And I use all of that as a theoretical lens to study the political and economic implications of how the internet is designed and governed. Internet governance, the term is actually an oxymoron because it's not just about governments. When you use that term, it means traditional laws and statutes and policies and international agreements among governments, what agencies are doing. But with the internet, almost all of the infrastructure is run and owned by the private sector. So we usually use the term multi-stakeholder internet governance to describe how this works. The private sector has a very powerful role in the governance regime around the internet. And there are also these new global institutions that cross borders, whether it be standard-setting institutions or new organizations like ICANN, which stands for the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. These institutions coordinate different aspects of the technology. So governance, internet governance, really just means the coordination and administration of the technologies that are necessary to keep the internet operational, and then the enactment of substantive policy around that infrastructure. Governance of the internet is one of the most powerful arenas for conflict right now. All of war is now being mediated by cyber technologies. You see examples of countries reaching across borders to, for example, disrupt energy systems. You see the public sphere being mediated by control of the infrastructure. The most obvious example is what social media companies are doing to try to address things like interference in our public sphere and trying to sway elections. You see social media companies trying to make decisions about what to do about cyberbullying, about nationalistic tendencies, about hate speech, and making all kinds of decisions that used to be made by the public or by governments. So we have the privatized control struggles, we have conflicts between governments over control of the internet, and we also have decisions in the very design of the internet that affect things that we would call civil liberties, like our speech rights and privacy. Everything that's important to us in society depends on the stability and security of the internet. It can't just be tackled by governments, it has to be tackled by the private companies that are dealing with things like so-called fake news, propaganda that materializes online, and also just hacking into emails. We have often discussed internet governance in the same context as internet freedom and the spread of democracy. And for the most part, we have had more access to knowledge, the freer flow of information, and all kinds of economic expansions and innovation. But on the other hand, we have this other view of the internet, which is coming from authoritarian governments, and in particular from Russia and China and other countries, where they see internet governance as part of controlling information and enhancing their ability to censor speech for political reasons. China's system of social scoring, which is rapidly developing, is using things like facial recognition to score people, based on activity, based on location, based on individuals' behavior. This is a very authoritarian approach to using the infrastructure of the internet as opposed to spreading democracy. So we have a tension. There is a very real tension right now between internet governance that is thought to expand rights online and expand the possibility of democracy. And we also have that intention with acts of authoritarian governments to repress speech and enact massive surveillance, some of which is obviously also happening in Western countries with massive government surveillance. I've just written a new book called The Internet in Everything, which is being published by Yale University Press. And it addresses the fact that more things than people are now connected on the internet. This is a major transformation. The internet is no longer just a communication system. It's also a control network in which all of these things are connected and in which battles over control of the infrastructure serves as a proxy for political power. So what I've done in the book is I've explained what this technological transformation is around cyber-physical systems. These are objects that exist both in the virtual world and in the physical world, and then what the implications are in particular for privacy and security, and then what needs to happen to give us the world that we want to live in that is safe and also provides some kind of security and privacy. I decided to begin this new book, The Internet and Everything, by asking a hypothetical question. And the question is, what would the internet be doing if humans suddenly left the Earth? It would be doing a lot. Automatic mortgage payments would be paid, Bitcoin would be mined, home thermometers would adjust our home systems, a giraffe wandering around a game reserve would trigger a motion detector that would open a gate, and robots in an Amazon fulfillment center would still be fulfilling orders. A lot would be happening until electricity stopped flowing. The internet lives. Thinking about that is a way of understanding how autonomous technology has become and how we've leapt from a world in which we enter the internet through screens to a world where it's just operating around us at all times. One of the main takeaways from my new book, The Internet and Everything, is that we need an all-hands-on-deck response to some of the problems that are arising in this very rapidly moving, accelerating technological area of innovation. It's not secure yet, and the privacy issues that are arising out of it are very, very significant. So in the book, I make recommendations about how to address some of the problems and how we all can have a part in helping. There are many opportunities for civil society groups such as non-governmental organizations and advocacy groups to enact change and to influence policies around the internet. We see this happening around privacy. We see it happening around how to address hate speech and cyberbullying. And we see it just in even the very technical areas, such as the development of protocols and standards for the internet. But we have a long way to go because there are many barriers to participation, even when there is an avenue to participate in things like the Internet Governance Forum or the Internet Engineering Task Force, which is just an organization that sets standards for the internet. It requires a lot of technical expertise. It requires the ability to take the time and participate, and it requires, in some cases, traveling to these events. So there are ways to participate, but sometimes there are barriers to that as well that are structural. There are also opportunities for individual citizens to have an impact in this area, certainly based on what we purchase, based on our own acts to secure our laptops and IoT devices. So there's a lot that people can do. One thing that has surprised me over the decades, actually, is how we don't use more encryption and high-powered cybersecurity techniques, because those technologies actually exist, and there are many kinds of incentives that work against the ability to use them. Private companies sometimes have an incentive to view what we do online, and having end-to-end encryption can sometimes disrupt that business model. And even governments sometimes have disincentives to have society install strong encryption because of the need to monitor communications for law enforcement and intelligence activities. But that has been a surprise over the decades. I think we can do better with cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is actually the great human rights issue of our time because it is necessary to secure our economy. Think for a moment what would happen if there were a widespread digital outage. It really wouldn't take very long for the global economy to crash. It also is necessary for protecting basic privacy and other kinds of civil liberties that individuals enjoy online. It's a very relevant question to ask, will we live in a world where we ever have privacy again? And the reason I ask that is because We not only use the internet through screens, we use the internet through the devices that are all around us in our homes, whether it is a home alarm system, a refrigerator, anything that's in the home is now connected, or in work, or while we're driving. So what kind of privacy will we have in that environment? We have to make that decision right now, and cybersecurity is a big part of that.